Today we have to talk about the upcoming BRICS Summit, because this might just be the start of an historic economic shift. See, over the past few months, China, they have been dropping clues that things won't be the same. Back when President Xi he met with Putin in Moscow, he gave the world a chilling warning, and I quote, "Right now there are changes, the likes of which we haven't seen for 100 years, and we are the ones driving these changes together." South Africa is expected to host the BRICS Summit in August 2023. However, the opportunity has morphed into an international challenge because, as we know, Russia's president, Vladimir Putin, he has been indicted by the International Criminal Court. But he has indicated that he will indeed attend. So we see, from that point of view, South Africa is right in the middle because they could face extreme anger of its BRICS partners if it's going to fulfill its international obligations according to the International Criminal Court and arrest Putin, right? Then the BRICS wouldn't want to have anything to do with South Africa. On the other hand, if they do not arrest Putin, South Africa could face sanctions from those countries that want to see Putin trialed for war crimes. But before we continue talking about the BRICS versus the G7 and soon the G20, I want to welcome you to Crypto Never Sleeps. Today with a new episode of An Investor's Reality. And in case you're new to this channel, then do me a favor, hit like, subscribe and smash on all them goodies so that you can be notified every time we upload new videos so that you can protect your wealth, preserve your wealth, and ultimately increase your wealth. My name is Nico Arachi, and I am a real investor. The world order is shifting, and BRICS are looking to build an economic powerhouse in order to challenge the established Western powers. What we are seeing is history in the making. It is as important as the fall of the Berlin Wall or the creation of the fraudulent Bretton Woods system. You see, in a few months' time, in August 2023, we could see the group that contributes to 31.5% of global GDP versus G7's 30% get even stronger. But first, I want to have a look at this lovely picture. You see, this is a gathering from the BRICS Foreign Ministers Summit or pre-meeting in Cape Town, South Africa. And in the front row we can see we have the ministers of China, Brazil, South Africa, India and Russia. Now they're all sitting down. Now try to focus on the standing row behind. These are the countries that are looking to join the BRICS bloc. And among them we have Iran, United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, all standing together. Now we know that these three countries, they are massive oil giants. So these, however, are only three of the potential other 19 countries looking to join the bloc. So I do believe that this is signaling a start of a new era. But the question is not only why are the BRICS looking to expand, but more importantly, why are there so many countries looking to gain membership? And from my point of view, this is pretty simple if you ask me. It is because the world is looking for alternatives to the current world order. I think many countries and many individuals are just fed up with the West imposing their way of life and the fraudulent monetary system. Now, as Indian Foreign Minister Jai Shankar said during the meeting, the BRICS must send out a strong message that the world is multipolar, that it is rebalancing. He then goes on to add that the heart of the problems we face today is economic concentration that leaves too many nations at the mercy of too few. Now I think it's very obvious that he's referring to the US dollar and the Western financial system. But in order to challenge the current power structure, the BRICS, they cannot remain a 5-member bloc, still not strong enough to drive any serious change. And that's why, perhaps in this August, we are very likely to see that the BRICS member countries is going to, add perhaps a 6th or even a 7th member to the group. But the problems of the past, and especially this past year, 2022, the world is slowly or quickly waking up, smelling the coffee. And this is not just the countries within the BRICS, but the entire world. Now, the US, we know, has a history of weaponizing the dollar. And we all know that after 2022, with the Russian and Ukrainian invasion and war, we saw the West freezing Russia's central bank's assets and cutting Russia off the international SWIFT system and the US dollar. Now, this did inflict a lot of short-term pain, but furthermore, it signaled, from my point of view, a big warning to the rest of the world. The reality today is that every country is still dependent on the US dollar and its fraudulent monetary system, right? But now let's use China as an example. I think we can all agree that China isn't the biggest fan of the United States, but no matter their differences, China has no choice but to transact in dollars and hold investments in dollars. Now you can see that the majority of 2022, China, they have been dumping their US Treasury holding. It has gone from over $1 trillion to under 860 billion. But there is actually no way that China can afford to reduce that amount to zero, at least not yet. They still have to hold on to a ton of treasuries, as the reason is very simple. They still need dollars to import key commodities like oil and gas. Now, over 70% of global transactions are still done in dollars, even in Asia, whether it's wheat, natural gas, or even gold. And most countries also price their exports in dollars. Plus, they also need a reserve currency to strengthen their economy. So basically, all currencies are still pegged to the dollar. Now, there is no escape. Even if the Chinese yuan gets too strong, China has to buy more dollars. And if it gets too weak, they need to sell dollars in the open market to pop up their currency. But it looks like things are changing. Now let's look at this Bloomberg story for a minute, because they put up a story with the title, "Backlash Against the Weaponized Dollar is Growing Across the World." See, countries there are beginning to realize that the US is using the reserve currency to fight geopolitical battles, and the rest of the world, especially BRICS, are looking to lessen reliance on the greenback. Now just consider this fact. According to the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, 88% of all global forex transactions are in dollars. And because banks have accounts at the Federal Reserve, they are also susceptible to US sanctions. And that's what it's really about. So countries, they're realizing that they can't be too dependent on the dollar, because they could lose access to their funds, basically to the entire financial system. Now, the usage of the dollar as a reserve currency has also been dropping over the last 2 decades. And it is a slow burn though, but it's been going from 72% to under 59%. But you got to look at the time frame, because this took decades. And this is what, let's say, the BRICS, they're trying to change in a much quicker period of time. Because of the Russian sanctions, there's now a global raging cry for change. Not just the Obama change, but real change. Therefore, I believe that we can expect the de-dollarization to proceed faster than ever before. However, don't forget, the dollar, or the de-dollarization, is only one part of the bigger picture. Obviously, it's clear that emerging markets, they want to break free of this dollar domination. But another big reason for the BRICS expansion is to grow their economies far, far away from the West. The developed countries, for instance, or for example, they've actually never really met their commitments. Now, they never hold their promises. We know that, right? And especially not when it came to the developing world. And right now, I'm referring to the investments being poured into Africa. Using Africa as an example because the next summit is in Africa. Now, since 2010, US investments, they have been dropping like a rock until it went negative for over 5 years. And this actually meant that more money was leaving Africa than getting into the continent from the United States. Now, if we look at China, on the other hand, they have been consistently investing into the region until they overtook the US in 2012. Now, in another story from Bloomberg with the title, US Fights for Influence in Africa, where China and Russia loom large. Now, I think we can all recall Janet Yellen's African tour back in January. It is obvious that America, they are trying to regain lost ground, but it looks like it just might be too late. Africa has been ignored far too long, and this last minute scramble for African money from Yellen and their friend Kamala Harris simply is not going to work. Here we can see that from 2016 to 2020, China has invested over $70 billion into Africa, followed by the UAE and then the rest of the Western world. But even if you add up the money from the US, France, the UK and Germany, it is still less than China by a very big margin. So I guess it's understandable why Africa feels abandoned by the West, and to counter this, the BRICS are looking to invest amongst themselves. They're going to rely less on Western money, and they're moving to fund their own expansion. And in order to do this, the BRICS Development Bank is about to expand its membership with Saudi Arabia as the latest entrant. And this is a big deal. It's a huge deal, because the Saudis, they have a ton of money, as we know, which will now flow to the developing countries from the BRICS Development Bank. This is very big. Now let us just think it through for a second. If the BRICS bloc can now fund its own expansion and help the developing world, do you think that this is going to accelerate the de-dollarization or not? Let me know what you think down below. I think the answer is clear, but we all have different views, especially when it comes to geopolitics. The way that I see it, obviously, because the funding will likely come in other national currencies outside of the dollar. I just listened to what the Brazilian foreign minister said. BRICS is an indispensable mechanism for building a multipolar world order that reflects the devices and needs of developing countries. So I guess it's very obvious that with new members such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the UAE, what the end game of the BRICS is. They want to create a multipolar order that are looking to give the world more alternatives, but in order to do that, they truly need the Middle East, the black gold of the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the UAE are key for the BRICS in order to stand a chance to flip the script. Even though, and we have heard many times of a new BRICS currency coming in the future. But right now, there's still a fundamental problem with it. You see, the BRICS economies, they are just too different. And it wouldn't be easy for them to agree on a common currency just like that. So I don't think it's going to happen in a matter of months, which is why I also don't think that we're going to see the launch of a new BRICS currency this year. However, over time, a common trading unit will certainly evolve from the BRICS bloc. So what's more realistic to expect from this year's summit is probably the announcement of increased bilateral trade, which anyway will increase the de-dollarization. Now the Middle East joining the BRICS is going to be a big game changer. And let's just really quickly recap just how much marketing power the Middle East has. Just Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iran alone account for 20% of global oil production. But there is a big difference between the production of US oil and Middle Eastern oil. You see, America's oil mainly flows into domestic consumption, flows into the domestic markets. But a majority oil from the Middle East is exported to the rest of the world. So if we rank countries by all exports, it is clear that the Middle East tops the list. Together, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the UAE, they export more than the entire Western world twice over. And this means it can actually dictate what the oil markets has to pay to access the physical commodity itself. Right now, it is still in US dollars, but as we know, this could change in a hurry. Because we could start to see the BRICS nations all buying oil and gas from the Middle East outside the dollar. They will use their own local currencies, and this means China will be buying using the yuan, while India will be using the rupees to buy energy, settling oil trades in their own local currencies. And this is also a form of de-dollarization, and that's why I think it's very likely that something big will happen come August, maybe not the currency, but new members, and basically trade deals in other currencies. Now, according to South Africa, or at least the BRICS foreign ministers, they are aiming to complete a framework for admitting new members before the summit this year. So I believe that Saudi Arabia or Iran, they could become the 6th or the 7th member. Now we know Iran has already applied, and with Iran's isolation being, totally isolated just behind North Korea and Russia, it's really no wonder that they want to find the BRICS attractive. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, they've always been a close ally of the West. But the Saudi foreign minister, he did make a very powerful statement, and it reveals why the kingdom is very keen to join. And it went a little bit like this. The kingdom remains the BRICS group's largest commercial partner in the Middle East. The total value of bilateral trade has exceeded $160 billion in 2022. And this clearly shows why Saudi Arabia is pivoting towards the BRICS nations. Obviously, they want to secure the economy because trade with the BRICS group, has increased double over the past 5 years. But now pay attention to this next part, because it clearly highlights Saudi Arabia's problem with the US. You see, the foreign minister added that Saudi Arabia, they share basic values with the BRICS countries, such as relations between countries that are based on the principle of respect for sovereignty and non-interference. Now focus on the word non-interference. That actually means allowing a country to govern itself without imposing any foreign policy together in combination with trade deals. And this is the main reason why the West is losing its touch with the Middle East. And this is why there's a power vacuum in the region that is slowly being filled by the BRICS bloc. Saudi Arabia needs to secure their oil revenues, and that's why they're looking to the BRICS. We just need to observe the recent oil production cuts by Saudi Arabia. That is about to wreck the global markets. I think this move is just going to take the world back into recession because it is reviving the inflation crisis. And we all know what that means. Central banks will need to hike interest rates even further. And in the latest report, Saudi Arabia is moving to cut oil output by 1 million barrels a day in July. And this is obviously a protective measure in order to push oil prices higher, because organic demand is slowly coming down. And that's why the Saudis are moving closer towards the BRICS bloc, because that's where the biggest market is. They're looking at BRICS as a gateway to the developing world. Especially now since the West have, confirmed time and time again that they are going green with renewable energy. They are moving away from fossil fuels and going carbon neutral by 2050. Now, if you and I were Saudi Arabia, it only makes sense to move where our clients are. We're almost getting to the end. The closing text and the bottom line is that the de-dollarization, that this train can't be stopped. We are really past the point of no return, and it's just a matter of time. We are really seeing many countries and individuals, perhaps you and I, already looking to break free. Now, China and Russia, they're obviously trading outside of the dollar, we know that. But Brazil and China recently struck a deal to settle trade in their local currencies, also seeking to bypass the green back in the process. India and Malaysia signed an accord to ramp up usage of the rupee in cross-border business. And even US ally France is starting to complete transactions in the Chinese yuan. And then we got that other little Middle Eastern country that President Bush made sure to bomb, but Iraq, they have outlawed the dollar. Anyway, let me know what you think. How big will the upcoming BRICS Summit be? Is this the start of a shift in a new world order? In case this video brought you any kind of value, do me a favor, hit like, smash, subscribe, come join the live streams. I am actually more trying to help you to protect, preserve, and increase your wealth. Come watch the live streams, they're fun. That's where you get an introduction, insight into the future of finance, which is being built right in front of your eyes, and it's being built on the blockchain. My name is Nico Harachi, and I am a real investor.